Asia Pacific Head of Data Center Solutions at CBRE. Right, good morning everyone. I think they're going to be setting up the chairs soon. So I'm here as a bit of, to set a bit of a context for our discussion. So today my topic for the panel, and I have a great team of panelists, we're going to be discussing green data centers. And I think the Australian High Commissioner set the stage very well for the green data center topic. So the topic today, advancing green data centers for a sustainable future. And why is this topic important? Let me just very quickly run through this. So we have all heard about the exponential growth of data centers over the years. And walking you through how fast the sector is growing, you can see the chart here. Globally, the data center market recorded double-digit growth of 16.5% over the last 5 years. This represents 20 gigawatt growth in 5 years. America remains the market leader with 17.4 gigawatts as of 2023, but Asia Pacific led the growth at 19.1%. And zooming into Malaysia, where the data center industry actually witnessed strong investment sentiments over the past couple of years, just the past 2 years itself. This slide illustrates how active the data center market has been in the past 2 years from 2021 to 2023. I stand corrected, but from less than 10 data center players in the market back prior to 2021 to now more than 30 players in the industry. Exponential growth indeed. So the next question that everyone will ask is, can the electricity supply support the rapid expansion of data centers in Malaysia? These are some of the headlines that we saw recently. So this is a question that is not just asked by myself. So this chart by the International Energy Agency in 2020 shows that there are now more hyperscalers and cloud DCs globally, but it actually shows that the overall energy demand of data centers remain quite flat, with due credit given to the improvement in operational efficiency in data centers. However, in a recent report, also by IEA, published in 2024, it says that the electricity demand of data centers are expected to double in the next 2 years. And this increasing demand of electricity implies that we must find a more sustainable way for us to manage data centers while generating more electricity. Otherwise, of course, this is at the cost of Mother Nature. And such growth is perhaps just the start as we see it. Everyone here must be a regular user of ChatGPT, Gemini, Microsoft Copilot, all new AI-powered language tools. So according to the IEA report, the average electricity demand for these AI-powered tools is nearly 10 times more compared to a typical Google search. So the requirement is indeed very high. Energy is a national agenda, and our country has recently introduced NETR, National Energy Transition Roadmap. This emphasizes on renewable energy and the achievement of net zero emissions by 2050. And as Malaysia moves towards a more sustainable future, how can the data center players or key stakeholders play their part? The pie chart here shows the breakdown of energy consumption in data centers. 40% for cooling, 40% to run the server, and the remaining 20% for the other associated IT equipment. So with this backdrop, let's start the panel discussion for digitalization versus sustainability. What is next? Can I introduce my panel? Right, okay, let's get started with the panel discussion. So lots of burning questions. Should I just go straight into it with the hardest question? Okay, so we started off asking about green data centers. Professor Chia, can I come to you as ESG Association of Malaysia? Let's start this off. What are the biggest challenges currently hindering the widespread adoption of green data centers?
Thank you, Amy. Thank you, organizer. And so I'm Chia. I'm the founding president of ESG Association of Malaysia. So just for your information, the E doesn't stand for entertainment. It stands for environment, social, and governance. So this is a new NGO whereby it's just being formed in the year of 2022. And the challenges of hindering green data center, I want to put something in perspective. Why not we call the blue data center, we call the red data center, have to be green data center. So first and foremost, we go back to the why. And in order to be green, I think the previous, even the Excellency from Australia and also Amy have touched about few valid points. In order to be green, meaning that you need to investment costs. There's 2 stages of data center in this country. I'm very fortunately, I was involved in 20 years ago or almost 30 years ago of data center in this country. Maybe many of you don't know. You think about it, the cost associated with data center, none other than the energy cost, the infrastructure cost, and then the building, the design cost, architecture cost. Okay. Of course, I'm not talking about electricity. And if many of you know, the main electricity supply in this country is powered by fossil. Do you all know that or not? Fossil is one of the biggest hindrance for ESG topics in the country. If data center is powered by electricity and energy, means this country will require more power supply. Meaning that more power supply equivalent to more electricity to be generated. Of course, the good news is government is taking a lot of actions, whether it's regenerative or thinking about the green energy supply. Number 2, the technology complexity. I think Ms. Daniel mentioned very, very important point about AI. The more usage of AI means the more DC will be built. The more DC will be built, that means the more energy consumption will impact this country. Think about our neighbor country, Singapore. Have we ever think Singapore is stopping the data center building for a couple of years? And Malaysia benefited, Iskandar is benefited. However, why Singaporean government as a smart nation, as an advanced nation, why do they want to do so? You know, I want to put forward to you all, remain as a thought. I want to pass back to Amy. Yeah.
Thank you, Professor Chia. So everyone here knows it's the power issue that is the main challenge. Okay, we have the challenge posed. How about now, let's take a look at possible solutions. So can I come to you, James, with your immense experience in globally and in Asia Pacific. Can you elaborate on some of the key technological advancements that are enabling the development of more environmentally friendly data centers?
I think it's interesting that we talk about environmentally friendly data centers. There's nothing wrong with a data center. A data center in itself uses very little energy. It is the IT inside the data center that does. You know, someone said to me at a conference in the Republic of Ireland last year, how can we stop using data centers? And my response was, madam, do you have a smartphone? Do you bank over your smartphone? Stop doing that, because you are exacerbating the use of data centers. So everybody in the hall here this morning, it's all your fault. It's all our fault that we have data centers. What can we do? Well, to put a moratorium on the use of data centers would probably provoke civil unrest globally, because we all use them on a daily basis. And anybody here today that has said, I've not used a data center today, probably does not understand what a data center is all about. Well, what are some of the advantages and advancements that there are? Well, a more modern server will produce many more transactions per second than a server 2 or 3 years old. A higher refresh rate of hardware can improve. However, what are you doing with the old hardware? Because that needs to become part of the circular economy. 1 ton of printed circuit boards will yield many hundreds of pounds of gold and other precious metals if it is recycled properly. Just to throw it away, remember Morgan Stanley, you may remember, was fined $98 million for the incorrect disposal of IT equipment. So dispose of it correctly, put it as part of that circular economy. That is important because that helps your Scope 3 emissions. So looking at these enablements helps our data centers to become much more environmentally friendly if we use them correctly and think about how we're using them. And in response to the use of ChatGPT and its likes, think before you click.
Right. So don't use Google search and ChatGPT so much?
Think before you click.
Right. Only use when necessary. I think that's what James is saying, but I picked up a very interesting point. Did you just say that we could recycle old server equipment into gold?
There is a lot of gold that is used inside your smartphone, inside your laptop, inside a server, as well as other precious metals, rare earth components, all of which are actually a finite resource.
Right. That opens up another sector of the entire circular economy. That's enlightening, James. Thank you. So, perhaps at the design stage of the data center, Benjamin, if I can come to you, beyond technology and the circular economy that James talked about, what operational changes can data center operators implement to minimize their environmental footprint, especially at the design stage for new data centers?
Yep. Good morning, attendees. Good morning, my fellow panelists. I'm Benjamin, Sustainable Solutions Architect here at Chint. We are a global manufacturer from low voltage to medium to high voltage electrical solutions, and also supplying largely to data centers and also the renewable sectors. So I'd like to share a little bit on what are my thoughts on that, and also echoing Prof. Chia. So Prof. Chia is, there are 2 phases of the data centers, right? One is, as it's the older ones that are already built, and then one that are currently in operations, and then going to be new built. So from Chint, what we see and what we see on this topic is the design stage is really important. You have to plan for it, and that requires foresight. So firstly, in terms of planning, in terms of design stage, what can be done? Firstly, of course, as James also mentioned, there is life cycle, right? To think about the life cycle of the equipment. So at Chint, our equipment, we think about our life cycle analysis, carbon footprinting, end of life for the circuit breakers, for the transformers. We think of that. Elon Musk famously said in really just shortly a few months ago only, he said that in this energy transition, everybody are talking about batteries, rare earth and all that. Interestingly, he didn't find that was the problem. Did anybody remember what he believes or what his forecast is the next problem? Transformers, power transformers, right? Because of the way we used to generate electricity is in power plants and all that. But today the grid is very different. Distributed energy sources means generation at different parts of the country, different places where you never used to generate electricity, and they all require power transformers to be connected to the grid. In the past, one big transformer versus now multiple smaller transformers is very different in terms of resources. But that being said, no. So come back to the topic of sustainability. transformers are going to be an issue, and here at Chint we've got certified transformers that are environmentally friendlier materials, right, such as the FR3 oil, the biodegradable oil. We also look at the end of life. We've got these carbon footprint certifications for these. So coming back to design, right, if all these are designed ahead of time, we can ensure that these data centers have the forward thinking of them being greener. And it comes to another potential topic is on the older data centers, what can be done, right? In the past, computational fluid dynamics, the analysis of air conditioning, of cooling is not done as advanced as today. Well, of course, today we have AI to do those calculations, right? We have those softwares to do that. But that being said, for older data centers, the embedded carbon in the building is already there, right? So once, what are you going to do? You're not going to tear down the whole building. That's not green at all, right? So keep the embodied carbon in the structure, but when we gut the insides, when we do a refresh, one of those solutions that can be done is containerized solutions. Containerized solutions, at Chint, what we do is we do the fluid dynamics within the container. We optimize the cooling within the container in a very close, contained environment versus a older data center which unfortunately didn't have the benefit of foresight, of computational power at that time to do all this analysis. So this is one of those things that we see can benefit and move even older data centers greener moving forward.
Right. Thank you, Benjamin. So it means that you can have green data centers, not just from design stage from a new build. You can also do that with your old data centers where you're refitting out the, retrofitting it, refreshing it. That's good to know, right, guys? So, okay, so that's from the construction side. Maybe let's now move towards the occupier side, the people who are occupying it. So, Daddy, can I come to you? Let's talk about green leases. What are the challenges you're seeing right now in terms of adopting green leases for data centers? And what are the opportunities for green leases for landlords and tenants in this space right now?
Thank you so much, Amy. It's a very good question indeed. One of the, I would say, the biggest drivers for data centers operator to change their, I would say, mindsets and as well as their facilities to be more green, right? It's actually driven by two types of, I would say, primary driver. One is the occupier, which is the company or the tenant that's going to use the services, and of course the investors. And there are a correlation between the request that came in from occupiers and how is it translates into a demand from investors, right? So green leases is basically a standard lease where it measures, it includes the components of measurements of a service provider's capabilities based on the green's, I would say, parameters. Right, that they put inside the leases. So the leases clause, they put the green parameters to make sure that the data center operator actually comply to that, right? One of the biggest challenges when we spoke and we interviewed with multiple operators is the premium to justify to change into a green facilities, right? How to justify the premiums. And a lot of the operators actually says that this is a cost to me. Right. How do I translate from this cost into a win-win solutions? So gone in the past where the occupiers will just say, this is the requirements, this is the PUE requirements that I have, this is my water usage effectiveness, WUE requirements, this is my COE requirements, carbon usage effectiveness, and you have to comply with it. So when there is a site selections and the operators are not able to comply, you actually limit yourself into just a limited number of operators who are able to comply, right? But that's not, I would say, the way moving forward. So in the green leases, the performance measurements is based in a way like an example, maybe currently the occupiers are paying $100 per kilowatts for a PUE of maybe 1.4, right? So when the PUE actually goes to 1.3, and then the occupier actually put in a carrot and says that I will actually top up more if you are able to achieve this PUE, right? Similarly, on the SLA levels, similarly, if you are using the renewable energies, similarly, if you are able to actually optimize the cooling solutions, and that actually translates into monetary benefits, right? That's, I think, it's opportunities presence, which is not to limit the filtering of the operators, is basically an operator's initiative to offer, I would say, an alternative solutions to address the occupiers' concerns.
Right, thanks, Dedi. Can I just ask,
Sure.
is there any data center in Malaysia right now that is already operating with green leases?
From what we are actually assisting right now, there are about 3 to 4 operators already operating under green leases. It's primarily driven by hyperscalers, which this is also part of the, I would say, criteria that they wanted to do business with these operators. And these operators, fortunately, is in the, like what Benjamin says, is in a design stage.
Okay.
So being in the design stage is very critical that you can accommodate all these leases, which is why what we call a pre-leasings, where a lot of the requirements from the occupier will be addressed and I would say customized during the designing of the data center facilities.
Right, this is good news. We are going in the right direction. It's great that we are starting with green leases, so there's light at the end of the tunnel, guys. Okay, so maybe in Malaysia, since I started that question as to whether or not we started green leases, it's good to know that we have. Let's go a bit further out to Asia Pacific. I'd like to come to you, James, and perhaps ask you, are there some benchmarks of green data centers, fantastic builds, that you have seen in Asia Pacific or around the world that perhaps you could highlight to the audience here, and we could take some examples out of it?
I think when we look at green data centres, we can refer to standards. The High Commissioner spoke earlier about neighbours, which applies primarily in Australia. Then we have Green Mark and all these other standards. You can go to LEED, BREEAM, etc. And you've got a
GBI.
list as long as your arm of all these standards, which is great. But what we need to think about is how are we reporting against those standards? People misunderstand some of these metrics. The infamous PUE is not an efficient, it is power usage effectiveness. That's what the E stands for, effectiveness, not efficiency. It is one of a range of metrics that we can use. However, if you have 6 people, they will have 7 ways of measuring PUE. There is only one way to measure PUE, and that's against an internationally recognized standard, ISO 30134. That is the standard way to measure PUE. You measure PUE in any other way is not PUE that you're measuring, it's something else. So to measure against an ISO standard, you have an ISO standard for carbon, for renewable energy factor, for energy reuse, for cooling efficiency. All of those are recognized ISO standards, and in Europe, they all have to be reported against under the Energy Efficiency Directive. Often what is being done in Europe at the moment is being viewed as the gold standard. So if you think here in Malaysia, there are no standards that affect us as far as that's concerned, wait. Think. Very soon it will be affecting all of us here, because Malaysia will take what is being done elsewhere and it will bring it in here. If we think, well, Malaysia Balela cannot affect us here, it will, because we are part of a global economy.
Yes.
And therefore global standards will affect what we want to do here. Not only here in Malaysia, but in Singapore, Indonesia, Philippines, Thailand, Vietnam, Hong Kong, Japan, Australia, New Zealand. It will affect everybody. And if we have a standard way of reporting, a standard range of metrics, But we need to know what it is that we're reporting first. Let's draw a baseline, find out where we are there, and then we can look at how we can improve and move on from that point. Really important to know where you are. Otherwise, I'll bring in this technological advancement and that will improve. But if you don't know where you're improving from, how do you measure what your improvement is? You can't manage what you don't measure.
Right. Okay. So we do have international standards that we can adhere to. So for those of us who are building new data centers, remember, James says international benchmarks, we must follow those. And moving on from, flowing through with that, Professor Chia, can I come to you and ask, what are the ESG factors, the environmental, social, governance factors that should be prioritized when we evaluate the sustainability of data centers? So this is a question for all of you who are building new data centers. Let's design it in from the get-go. Especially in Johor, we are seeing a lot of that, right? So Professor Chia.
Yeah, thank you. I'm very glad as President of ESG Association Malaysia, this question are being intertwined in the data center industry about ESG. So in the business, we're talking about integrating the ESG principle into your business priority. So come back to this 10 years ago when during my previous portfolio, we acquired a 30,000 square feet data center. Very small, not big as many of you here. And guess what? We never ever considered the ESG element in the acquisition. I'm not talking about green financing and European Union enforcing about C-band, cross-border adjustment mechanism, there's carbon footprint and so on. And I'm very glad this question actually. So that's give me a thought process when I came here prepare for this event. So there's a three element of E, S, and G. First and foremost, E, of course, you're talking about environment. What kind of environment that data center designer architecture should consider? I think earlier we mentioned about the number one is energy. Number two is about, of course, renewable energy. I'm very happy Jim just now highlighted one word. He mentioned a lot of insight, but I don't know whether you all remember there's one word he used it just now, scope 3 emission. Any one of you catch it? If you don't catch it, please do a search. Scope 3 emission. This is very, very critical component in data center. So, of course, the water usage in data center is interesting. And there's another word is mentioned by my esteemed panelists, waste management. So during the early days when we do the due diligence for data center, we never thought about waste is part of the consideration. But because of this ESG, we must consider. So the next element will be social. What kind of consideration of social factor into a data center acquisition, data center building? It is, however, if you all understood, ESG was started in year of 2004 when then the Secretary General of United Nations, Mr. Kofi Annan, launched this ESG concept. And with reference to a book, the book is called Who Cares Wins. So, long story short, one of the gist of the book is that socially responsible investment, especially for financial investment. So the S part, we talk about very simple, labor practice, community engagement, and diversity and inclusion. I might be a bit old generation of them now, but in those days, 10 years ago, we never considered. Then come back to the S. I think just now James mentioned about the data, about reporting. In the G element in ESG, transparency reporting is very, very critical. C-band, European Union, whether those are GRI standard, TCFD standard, ISAC standard, all these standards, I'm not throwing a approbation to you, but the data center industry is a boom in the country, and as a part of the nation, Malaysian, I'm very happy because 10 or 15 years ago, when during the ETP or EPP1, I think that my colleague MDEC is also here, our friend, we are strongly encourage the data center industry in this country. However, matter of fact, we lost big time to Singapore. But this 1-2 year, there's a lot of good news is coming to this country. So finally, the compliance and risk management in the G element is very important. Think about data center you design, think about data center you build, think about data center you operate, think about data center vendor that you engage, whether Amazon, Microsoft, Azure, how do they practice about their compliance and risk management? I think these are the few questions you all should ask before you all engage any of these provider. Previously, this ESG was never in the picture. But if ask yourself a question, in order for you to contribute to preserve, to do a triple bottom line, people, planet, and profit, think about it. So whether the data center provider that you're going to engage is responsible. I like James again, sorry. He mentioned something, the moment we click, there's already usage happening. So can we take a pause before we click? You know, I pass back to the to moderator.
But definitely click to find out scope 3, right? Right, okay. So power being the main thing in, not just the main thing, but one of the big factors in ESG. Ben, can I come to you with this question? Power, energy. Let's talk about renewable energy. What are the options we have in Malaysia in terms of renewable energy?
So Prof. Chia mentioned that Malaysia at the moment largely is fossil fuel. But that being said, there are dams, there are hydropower in this country. Some people find it, yeah, maybe it's not super sustainable. Of course, there is ESG factors. Yeah. Well, on the power generation side, it's okay, but you know, on the S&G, there is some debate over there. But that being said, coming back to the topic, what other possible what other energy sources? Wind energy is one of those possibilities, right? Of course, solar, right? For a country that is very near the equator, there's a lot of opportunities for solar. We see the government recently launching LSS 5 that will really spur the connectivity, but it's also with a lot of forward planning, LSS 5 and renewable energy. Not throwing shade at Vietnam, but I mean, they were a first mover, but it was probably, unfortunately, not forecasted well enough that the grid was not ready. And it comes back to my earlier point that, you know, power transformers, Elon Musk saw that coming as well. But then again, so for solar energy, this is one possibility. And of course, this country has a lot of opportunities with biofuel as well, right? Biodiesel and used cooking oil and all those. So I see that there are many opportunities for different kinds of renewable energy sources here in Malaysia, especially when there are more spaces. As Prof. Chia mentioned, Singapore, and Amy also mentioned, right, Singapore, we completely stopped, caveat, I'm from Singapore. Yeah, so APAC HQ is in Singapore and I'm there. So we don't have a lot of space. We don't have the opportunities for wind. We don't have opportunities for hydro. We're really all fossil fuel. So then it comes to Malaysia, but this is a country rich in resources and having those opportunities for renewable sources really have to be on the top of the minds of the various data center operators. And it also comes back to my design phase, right? When we talk about design phase, implementing solar at the design stage of a data center is going to cut down a lot of costs compared to a brownfield installation. Anytime, the moment the building is constructed, then you start to think about wanting to do solar on the roof. Then you got to think about harnessing points. You got to think about insulation, water insulation, air insulation. And in fact, solar on the roof of a data center acts as a second factor, and that is a shield. It shields it shields the data center below from the sun, and that also improves its energy efficiency, air cooling, cooling efficiencies within the building. So there are many opportunities. I come back to my earlier point. Design stage is important, yesterday at the conference as well, someone talked about, someone shared with me that why is it not possible to use the waste from palm oil for the production of energy? Really, at the end of the day, I say, well, it comes down to the point of design, the circular economy. If with enough planning ahead, right? Data centers can be built right next to palm oil plantations and processing plants, and use those waste heat, waste water, the circular economy. Those are all things that can be considered early on as well. Yeah.
Right, so many new ideas that we could possibly include. So, okay, let me do a quick round robin to wrap up the panel. Looking ahead in less than 5 words, please. If everyone in the audience could implement one thing today to contribute to a greener data center and ecosystem, what would your recommendation be? Can we start with you, James?
I've never been known to speak in less than 5 words. However, consistent reporting of energy and carbon. That's 6, but
Thank you. Consistent reporting of energy and carbon. So it's about reporting. Daddy.
I would say it's a pragmatisms, and the spirit of, I would say, is a joint goal between whoever wanted to execute I would say the green building, and as well as the persons or the company that willing to I would say consume the services. So pragmatisms and a willingness to work together.
Right, pragmatism and willingness between the building owner, the landlord, the tenant. Professor Chia.
I hardly conclude in 5 words or 3 words. Championing a sustainable future.
Right, championing a sustainable future. And Ben.
I would say for me, value, right? Value proposition is important. Engineering, we are, I think in this room there are many engineers here as well. Engineering, and think about the carbon, right? Talk about footprint, and if our last word is energy. I would say these are some of my last takeaways, and happy to share more at our booth over in the hall next door on what I think about these 5 points.
Right, thank you very much, panelists. So I guess the future of data centers is not just about processing power, it's about processing power responsibly. Thank you very much. Thank you very much, audience. You've been great. Thank you.